My name is Victor Hale, I'm 54, and everything I own came from work that hurt my back and emptied my hands. No inheritance. No shortcuts. Just factories, overtime, and the kind of discipline you learn when nobody's coming to save you. I raised my daughter alone after her mother left. Emily. Bright kid. Sharp tongue. Always convinced the world owed her something for surviving it. At first, I thought it was my fault. Maybe I'd worked too much. Maybe I'd given her money instead of time. That's what people say when things go wrong, find the nearest mirror and blame it. But mirrors don't always tell the truth. Emily learned early that my wallet opened faster than my mouth. Tuition? Covered. Rent? Covered. Credit card emergencies? Covered. She called it support. I called it love. The spending crept up slowly. Designer clothes she needed for confidence. Trips that were important for mental health. Restaurants where the bill could have fed a family for a week. And then came the substances. She never called them drugs. She said stuff. A phase. Self-medication. Pills first. Then powders. Then nights she couldn't remember and mornings she couldn't explain. I found out the hard way, bank statements and silence. When I confronted her, she cried beautifully. That's a skill some people develop. She said she was struggling. That she hated herself. That she was lost. So I paid for rehab. Twice. When she finally got clean, she made sure everyone knew. Social media posts. Long captions. Inspirational quotes. Photos of coffee mugs and sunrise windows. Proud of how far Eve come, she wrote. She was proud. I was uneasy. Because getting clean doesn't erase the damage you did while you were high. And it doesn't give you ownership over money you never earned. Emily wore recovery like a medal. Like it entitled her to comfort forever. Like surviving her own choices meant she shouldn't have to suffer consequences anymore. She didn't say thank you when I paid off her rehab debt. She said, I deserve peace now. That sentence stuck in my throat for years. Meanwhile, the spending didn't stop. It just got cleaner. No more shady charges. Just high-end furniture. Expensive therapy. Healing retreats. A lifestyle built entirely on my labor and her belief that pain exempted her from responsibility. The disgust came quietly. Not explosive. Not dramatic. Just a feeling in my chest when she ordered without looking at prices. When she talked about finding herself while living off money I earned welding steel at dawn. I hated that feeling. What kind of father feels repulsed by his own child? But honesty doesn't care about comfort. One night, after a business trip, I sat alone in my kitchen and added it all up. Not just the money, but the years. Over $600,000. Money that could have gone to retirement. To rest. To a life that didn't end in exhaustion. And what scared me most wasn't the number. It was that she didn't see it as mine. When I finally told her I was cutting her off, she laughed. You're overreacting, she said. I'm not on substances anymore. I'm doing great. Great. Living in an apartment I paid for. Driving a car I leased. Planning a future funded by a man she barely respected. You're an adult, I said. Adults survive. Her face changed then. Not fear. Not sadness. Anger. So you're punishing me for getting better? She snapped. That's when I knew. She didn't see support as a bridge. She saw it as a right. I told her she had 3 months. Rent would stop. Card would stop. Transfers would stop. She called me cruel. Told friends I was abusive. Said I was re-traumatizing her. I didn't argue. I just felt something heavy settle in my chest, a mix of grief and relief. Because love without limits had turned into rot. And somewhere along the way, I taught her that survival was something other people paid for. That ends now. The first week after I told Emily the money was ending, she acted like it was a misunderstanding, like I'd said something dramatic in the heat of the moment and I'd come back around once I calmed down. That's what entitlement does. It treats boundaries like tantrums. She called the next day in a sweet voice I hadn't heard since she was a teenager. "Dad," she said, like she was offering peace, "I've been thinking maybe we should do family therapy. We can work through this together." Together. That word used to soften me. It used to sound like healing. Now it sounded like a billing strategy. "I'm not going to therapy to negotiate whether you become an adult," I told her. "You have 3 months. That's the kindness." She went quiet, then exhaled hard. "You're being cold," she said. "I'm trying to communicate like a healthy person and you're shutting me down." Healthy person. I pictured her a year earlier, eyes glassy, lying about where she'd been, the way she'd disappeared for 2 days and came back claiming she needed space. I remembered the phone call from a clinic, the nurse's clipped voice saying they'd found her dehydrated and incoherent. And then I remembered her Instagram post afterward, her chin lifted, sunlight hitting her face like a halo. I'm proud of how far I've come. She was always proud. Never accountable. Proud was easy. Paying was hard. "Cold is what you call it when someone stops funding your chaos," I said, and hung up before my voice could shake. I didn't enjoy saying it. That's the part people don't understand. I wasn't doing this because I wanted to hurt her. I was doing it because I couldn't stand the person she'd become, this adult child wearing recovery like armor, acting like quitting the substances was the finish line instead of the minimum requirement to rejoin life. And if I'm honest, the disgust wasn't just at her. It was at myself. Because I created the environment where she could be this way. I taught her that tears were currency and I was the bank. The second week, she tried anger. She came to my house unannounced. Knocked like she owned the place. When I opened the door, she pushed past me into the living room like she was storming a courtroom. "You're punishing me," she said immediately. "No," I replied. "I'm stopping." Her eyes flashed. "After everything I survived?" I stood there, arms at my sides, listening to her talk like she'd climbed a mountain, when the mountain was mostly the mess she built herself and I paid men to haul her down from it. "You want credit?" I asked quietly. "Fine. Credit for getting clean. That matters. But it doesn't buy you a lifetime subscription to my money." She stared at me like I'd slapped her. Then her voice dropped into that sharp, slippery tone, half accusation, half performance. "I knew it," she said. "You never respected my recovery." I almost laughed, but it came out as a tired breath. "Emily," I said, "I respected it so much I paid for it. Twice. I respected it so much I didn't tell people what you did to me. I respected it so much I let you rebuild in comfort while I kept working like a mule." She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. "And you know what disgusts me?" I continued, and the word came out before I could soften it. "Not that you used substances. Plenty of people fall. What disgusts me is how proud you are of surviving while pretending the wreckage doesn't count." Her face crumpled, then hardened. "I can't believe you'd talk to your own daughter like that. I can't believe you'd let your own father fund your entire life and still talk to me like I'm the villain," I replied. That was the first time I saw real fear flicker behind her eyes, not fear of losing me, but fear of losing the system. She looked around the house like she was calculating what else was mine that she'd assumed was hers. "Okay," she said, forcing calm. "So what? What do you want? An apology? You want me to grovel?" I shook my head. "I want you to live on what you earn," I said. "That's it. That's the whole lesson." She laughed again, bitter. "You don't get it. It's not that simple anymore. I'm rebuilding my life." "Then rebuild it with your own hands," I said. "Not mine." She stepped closer, voice rising. "If I relapse, that's on you." There it was. The old weapon. The loaded gun placed gently on the table like it belonged to me. I stared at her for a long moment, letting the silence get heavy enough that she couldn't wriggle out of it. "No," I said finally. "If you relapse, that's on you. That's the point of recovery, isn't it? Responsibility." Her eyes filled, but this time the tears didn't move me. I'd seen too many versions of them, tears that arrived right on schedule, right when consequences showed up. 3 months, I repeated. "Use them." She left with a dramatic slam of the door. I stood in the hallway listening to her footsteps fade, and I felt that ugly mix again, revulsion and grief. That night I did what I should have done years earlier. I made it real. I canceled the card. I removed her from the account permissions. I set an automatic final transfer, one last cushion, and then shut the faucet. I didn't do it with rage. I did it with the same calm I used when I fired people who wouldn't show up sober. Because at some point, love without limits stops being love. It becomes surrender. And I was done surrendering. The first month after the cutoff, nothing really changed. That's the part nobody tells you about. When you remove the safety net, people don't fall right away, they hover. They borrow momentum from habits built on comfort. Emily still went to cafes. Still posted photos. Still talked about projects and opportunities. She was spending the last of the air. She texted like everything was normal. Found a great therapist. Thinking about a creative pivot. Money's tight but I'm managing. Managing meant the final transfer I'd warned her about. I knew exactly when it hit her account. I didn't tell her I knew. The second month was louder. Calls came late. Her voice lost its polish. "Dad, rent's higher than I remembered. Do you think you could just help this once? I'm not asking forever." Forever was never how it started. I said no. Every time. Not cruelly. Not triumphantly. Just no, like a closed door you don't lean on because you know it won't open. That's when the resentment sharpened into something ugly. She accused me of abandoning her. Of not understanding recovery. Of triggering old wounds. She told relatives I'd become cold. She told friends I was controlling. What she didn't tell them was that she'd never once asked how to survive without my money. Only how to get it back. The third month, she showed up again, this time different. No makeup. Hair pulled back tight. Clothes worn, not styled. She smelled like cheap coffee and panic. She didn't sit down. "I might lose the apartment," she said flatly. I nodded once. "That happens when you don't pay rent." Her jaw tightened. "You don't have to be like this." "Like what?" I asked. "Like you're above it." Above it. I looked at her, really looked. At the 30-year-old woman standing in my living room like a teenager waiting for punishment she thought was unfair. "I worked 2 jobs at your age," I said. "I slept on a mattress on the floor. Nobody paid my way out of that." She scoffed. "Times are different. Human nature isn't, I replied. She crossed her arms. I can't believe you'd let me struggle. The word struggle irritated me more than it should have. Struggle is when you work and still come up short. Struggle is effort meeting resistance. What Emily was experiencing was exposure. You're not struggling, I said. You're adjusting. She stared at me like I'd spoken another language. I got clean, she snapped. Isn't that enough? There it was again. The medal she kept trying to cash. No, I said quietly. That's the entry fee. Not the prize. Her eyes filled. This time the tears came slower, heavier. Realer. I'm scared, she admitted. That cracked something in me, but not enough to bend. I know, I said. That's what this feels like. She waited. For a rescue line. For me to say I'd cover rent, or co-sign something, or make a call. I didn't. What if I mess up? She asked. What if I relapse? I took a breath. This mattered. Then you get back up, I said. Like millions of people do, without a private sponsor named Dad. She flinched. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple, I replied. It's just yours. She left without slamming the door this time. 2 weeks later, she lost the apartment. I found out through her cousin, not through her. Emily was too proud, or too angry, to tell me directly. She couch-surfed. Picked up part-time work she complained was beneath her. Missed shifts. Burned bridges. For the first time, her life had weight. And here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. I felt relief. Not joy. Not satisfaction. Relief. Because for the first time, her choices were finally touching her, not me. She stopped posting inspirational quotes. Stopped talking about healing. Started talking about schedules, paychecks, buses. Reality stripped the poetry right out of her. One night, she called me drunk, not high, not relapsed, just drunk enough to drop the performance. You hate me, she said. I closed my eyes. No, I said. I hate what I enabled. Silence. I don't know who I am without your money, she whispered. That was the most honest thing she'd ever said. That's what you're about to find out, I replied. I hung up afterward and sat alone in the dark, hands resting on my knees, feeling that familiar mix again, revulsion and grief. Because loving someone doesn't mean liking what they've become. And sometimes the only way to stop feeding a sickness is to let the patient feel the fever. By the 4th month, Emily stopped sounding angry. Anger burns energy. Pride does too. When both run out, what's left is something quieter, raw survival. She called less. When she did, her voice had lost its edge, like a blade worn down by hitting stone too many times. I got a job, she told me one evening. I didn't congratulate her right away. I waited. At a catering place, she added. Night shifts. It's exhausting. I know, I said. Work usually is. There was a pause. Then something I hadn't heard from her in years. I didn't realize how expensive being alive is. That sentence landed heavier than any accusation she'd thrown at me. For the first time, she was noticing gravity. She talked about buses. About standing on her feet for 10 hours. About managers who didn't care about her story, only whether she showed up on time and sober. They don't know what Eve been through, she said once, frustrated. They don't need to, I replied. They need you to do the job. That answer annoyed her, but it also stuck. She moved into a small room in a shared apartment. 3 roommates. Thin walls. No dishwasher. No silence. The kind of place you don't decorate because you're not sure how long you'll last. She hated it. Good. Not because I wanted her miserable, but because comfort had been numbing her for years. Pain, at least, was honest. One night she showed up at my door unexpectedly. Not demanding. Not dramatic. Just tired. She stood there holding a grocery bag with her own money inside it, generic brands, dented cans, bread already a little stale. "I cooked," she said awkwardly. "I thought maybe we could eat." I let her in. She moved through the house differently now. Carefully. Like a guest. Her eyes lingered on things she used to take for granted, the couch, the shelves, the quiet. Dinner was silent at first. Then she said it, staring into her plate. "I used to think you were cheap." I didn't react. "I thought you were controlling," she continued. "Obsessed with money." I nodded slowly. "And now?" She swallowed. "Now I think you were just aware." Aware. That was progress. She told me she'd almost relapsed 2 weeks earlier. Not substances, something worse. Calling me. Begging. Turning fear into leverage like she'd always done. "I stood outside a bank for 20 minutes, she admitted. Just staring at my phone." "What stopped you?" I asked. She hesitated. I didn't want to hear myself sound like that again. That surprised me. Not because she'd resisted, but because she recognized the pattern. "I hate who I was," she said quietly. That was new too. Not shame. Recognition. We sat in silence after that, the kind that doesn't need filling. When she left, she hugged me. Not the clinging, desperate hugs from before. Just a brief, awkward one. I didn't feel proud. I felt cautious. Growth isn't a straight line. And people who've lived on cushions panic when the ground gets hard. 2 weeks later, she called crying. "I got fired," she said. "For what?" I asked. "I was late. Twice." I closed my eyes. "That happens." "They didn't care," she sobbed. I explained everything. "They never do," I said gently. She waited for me to soften it. To rescue her. To offer something. I didn't. "I don't know how people live like this," she whispered. "They don't," I replied. "They learn." She didn't speak for a long time. Then, quietly. "I think I used recovery as an excuse." That was the sentence that told me the lesson was finally landing. An excuse for what? I asked. "For staying a child," she said. I leaned back in my chair. "That's a hard thing to admit," I said. "I know," she replied. "It makes me feel disgusting." There it was. The word I'd been afraid to acknowledge in myself. "Good," I said. "Disgust can be useful if you don't drown in it." She sniffed. "You really don't care if I hate you, do you?" I thought about it. "I care," I said. "I just care more about who you become." She didn't say thank you. She didn't apologize. But she hung up and didn't call back for help. She found another job. A worse one. Stayed longer. Learned faster. Missed fewer shifts. The safety net was gone now. And she was still standing. Barely. But standing. And for the first time since she was a child, I wasn't carrying her weight. I was watching her carry her own. The winter after Emily learned how to stand on her own was a quiet one. No emergencies. No late-night calls. No dramatic speeches about healing or injustice. Just gaps, long stretches where I didn't know exactly where she was or how she was doing. That used to terrify me. Now it felt necessary. She called once every couple of weeks. Short conversations. Practical ones. I switched jobs. I found a cheaper room. I'm tired all the time. I didn't offer advice unless she asked. I didn't praise her like a child for doing what adults do every day. I listened. That was it. One Sunday afternoon, she showed up at my door unannounced again. But this time, she didn't look panicked or defeated. She looked worn. Older. She carried herself differently, like gravity had finally introduced itself and she'd stopped fighting it. I brought coffee, she said, holding up a cheap paper cup. Didn't know how you take it anymore. I smiled faintly. Black. She nodded. Figures. We sat at the table. No speeches. No emotional traps. Then she surprised me. I owe you an apology, she said. I waited. Not for the substances, she continued. Eve apologized for that 100 times. I mean for what I did after. For acting like surviving excused me from growing up. I studied her face. She wasn't performing. No audience. No script. I used you, she said quietly. And I told myself it was okay because I was recovering. But really I was just scared to live without a cushion. That word again. Cushion. I hated you for taking it away, she admitted. And part of me still does. But another part of me knows I'd still be drifting if you hadn't. I felt something loosen in my chest, not relief, not pride. Release. I didn't do this to punish you, I said. I did it because I couldn't stand watching you rot in comfort. She nodded. I know. She looked down at her hands. I used to think you were cold, she said. Now I think you were just done lying. That might have been the closest thing to understanding we'd ever had. She stayed for an hour. We talked about neutral things. Weather. Work. Food prices. Life stripped of drama. When she stood to leave, she hesitated. I don't expect anything from you, she said quickly. Money, help, nothing. I just wanted you to know I'm trying. For real. I see that, I said. She nodded once, then left. After the door closed, I sat alone at the table for a long time. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a man who finally stopped confusing sacrifice with love. People don't like stories like this. They want redemption arcs wrapped in hugs. They want parents to save their children no matter the cost. But there's a truth nobody likes to say out loud. Sometimes saving someone means refusing to carry them anymore. Emily didn't become strong because I loved her harder. She became stronger because she got hungry. Hungry for stability. For dignity. For something she built herself. And yes, part of me still feels that quiet disgust when I think about the years she spent burning my money while congratulating herself for surviving the fire she lit. That feeling doesn't vanish overnight. But it doesn't control me anymore either. I love my daughter. I just don't confuse love with rescue now. And if she falls again, I'll be there, with words, not wallets. With boundaries, not bailouts. Because Eve learned something that took me half a lifetime to accept. You can give someone everything and still fail them. But if you give them the chance to face themselves, really face themselves, they might finally become someone you can respect.